Living in a peaceful place is many people's yearning. And although calm is the rule that usually applies in some cities and countries of the world, the truth is that things aren't always like that. And we're not talking about crime, but rather to those events that go beyond our understanding. Feeling that something disappears around us, that someone is watching us in the distance, and that even objects move without an apparent reason. This becomes part of your daily routine. If you don't believe us, then you have to check out the content we've compiled about these 5 mysterious videos you wouldn't believe if they weren't recorded. But before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Soul escaping the body. Who has never heard about the fabulous myth that claims that when we die, our souls leave the body and rise to the sky? If you live around people who are very religious about this type of situation, we're sure that some of this information is stored in your memory. However, not everyone supports this fascinating theory. On the contrary, some people consider it absurd and too far from what science establishes. But despite this, over the years, there have been cases of people claiming to have lived that kind of extracorporeal situation, where the souls really come off their bodies and they seem to be clearly watching everything that happens around them. How about that? If you're skeptical, you may find everything we're saying hard to believe. For this reason, you should pay attention to the next recording that was suddenly captured by a surveillance camera in what appears to be a hospital room or morgue. At first, there seems to be nothing strange. It's just the body of a deceased person on a lonely stretcher in the middle of the night. After all, the white cloth covering his figure shows we're dealing with a corpse. However, despite the fact the context itself doesn't seem very encouraging, the situation begins to become strange and even creepy when the camera manages to record the exact moment when a luminous shadow emerges from the unconscious body of the person. This kind of transparent entity sits on the stretcher seconds before rising and vanishing into thin air. What do you think now? By taking a closer look, it's almost impossible to ignore the fact that the mysterious shadow actually looks like a soul leaving the deceased body. Incredible, right? Of course, there are no reliable sources to verify the facts, but the images captured in the video clearly show one of the most amazing mysteries of humanity. Can you imagine this really happening at the moment of death? We're sure many would like to have the opportunity of spying on their friends and family to see what they say about them after their death. However, whether this video is real or a simple trick performed by people wanting attention, this time we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and we'll leave you the responsibility of judging on your own what your eyes have just seen. Number 4. Sweet dreams. There's nothing like a good night's sleep after a long and heavy working day. Sometimes it's enough for our faces to touch the pillow and fall into a deep sleep. You don't have to deny it. You can be sure we've all been there. However, the scenes we'll show you next are not even a bit comforting. Do you think that resting hours are always a luxury? If you're the type of person who usually has a heavy sleep, brace yourself and watch carefully what happens in the next recording. It shows a baby boy sleeping deeply in his room, and thanks to the open window, it's only a matter of looking carefully at what's happening outside. Do you usually let cool night breezes sneak into your room? Maybe when the young man watched the video, a few hours later, he started closing the window. A white shadow seems to move out of the window for a few seconds before sliding quickly into the room. Did you see it? If your reaction was like ours, we're sure you got goosebumps. But that's not all. The camera continues to record that mysterious scene. And if what happened previously didn't scare you enough, this will. The young man, unaware of what's happening around him, is still asleep, while the blanket covering his lower half begins to sponge as if someone was getting under it. A second after that, it can be clearly seen how the piece of cloth is lifted in the air and thrown hard to the floor. Finally, the mysterious shadow goes out the window again. What do you think now? The origin of the video was unknown, including the reasons that led the boy to go to sleep with the surveillance camera. However, we agree the scene seems to be taken from a horror movie. If the young person who appears in the recording used to go to bed with a feeling of happiness, probably after watching the images captured by the camera, they'll start worrying about going to bed every night. What would you do? Maybe from now on you'll be more careful when you go to sleep. Waking up and finding your treasured blanket on the floor and not in the place where it should be is enough reason for all the alerts to turn on. Number 3. Mess in the kitchen. Has it ever happened to you that you go back to your house and find the kitchen all messed up? And no, we don't mean the typical mess your family can cause, like kitchen utensils out of place or pieces of pizza half eaten on the table. On this occasion, we're talking about a real disaster, like the one that can be found after a house was burglarized or hit by a violent earthquake. Now, can you imagine it? Well, that was what the owner of the house probably found during the recording we're going to show you next. If you've seen the Paranormal Activity films, and you consider yourself a true fan, then you most likely know the devastating scene from the second film, where all the kitchen and living room utensils began to move on their own, leaving a complete mess. Of course, being a film production, you may think something like this is impossible to happen in real life. Dishes and cutlery flying all over the air? Never. However, your perspective on things may change a little when you see what happens in the air of this ordinary home. And it's not exactly a scene for a movie. Without anyone expecting it, the objects found in the kitchen began to move with extraordinary strength, almost as if someone was throwing them on the floor with fury. However, it's clear that no one was there. Dishes, cutlery, glasses, and even the doors of the shelves began to move uncontrollably. You can also see how several fruits fly off from the kitchen counter until they crash hard on the floor. What do you think now? Do you think the wind is capable of causing this powerful effect? Whatever this mysterious and terrifying event may have been, we're sure the inhabitants of the house didn't expect to find themselves hours later in the midst of a situation as chilling as this one. Maybe at first they would think a burglar entered their home to steal, but it's only a matter of checking images captured in this amazing video to come to their senses and to begin to think the universe is much more mysterious than it seems. Number 2. Inexplicable winding. Has it ever happened to you that you drive quietly in your car and a pedestrian gets in your way? If you're the kind of person who has a very fast life or you're super sloppy and easily distracted, it probably happened to you at some point in your life. Although our intention is not to judge you or anything like that, sometimes you have to admit there are many adrenaline-loving people who tend to cross the street despite the fact that traffic light is shining green. But do you think it's possible that this kind of situation happens outside a parking lot and in the middle of the night? Well, this is what a surveillance camera recorded during the night when a couple came out of their car from a parking lot. But the impressive thing isn't that someone has jumped in the middle of the car's trajectory, but that this person never existed. Yes, we know it seems like a joke and it even gets a bit confusing, but just watch the video and you'll realize we're not lying. The car was moving at a considerable speed, taking into account the time and the clearness of the road, when suddenly the figure of a person seems to come out of nowhere across the road. You don't believe it? Well, look again carefully. The car stops and the driver immediately gets out to verify what happened. He even checks under the bumper while the woman who comes with them also gets out the car and seems to look for a trace of the person they hit. However, there's nothing. The only thing you notice is a sheet of paper in the back, which if you're a good observer, you'll have noticed it wasn't there before. Interesting, right? Whatever it was, we're sure it wasn't from this world. Just take a look at how shocked the people in the car are. It's enough to realize how scared they were as well. After all, hitting someone with your car is probably not a pleasant feeling, much less if you do it at almost 3 in the morning. Can you imagine the reaction of their friends? Fortunately, the moment was captured on video, because if not, we're sure no one would believe them. We wouldn't have believed them either. Number 1. Bike of Terror. If you know a little about Japanese customs, then you probably know they usually have specific places to park bicycles. Not all young Asians have the advantage Americans have of owning a car at an early age. However, not everyone is honey over flakes, and the video we've placed on the number 1 spot of our top 5 proves it. In this one, we see a young man walking towards his bicycle at the end of a long day of work. Or that's what we assume. The point is that after removing the safety ropes from the vehicle, you can see at the back of the parking lot one of the bicycles fall, making a big noise and scaring the young man. Thinking that it was someone playing a joke, the boy seems to look around for the origin of the noise. In the end, deciding it could have been the wind, he puts the bike back where it was and returns in search of his bicycle. And this is where the recording becomes mysterious and spooky. Before he can leave the establishment, his body collides with the figure of a strange woman in a black dress. This one seems to go through him as if it were a ghostly entity. Can you believe it? After that, the video suffers from a strong interference and then the image is cut. Although many say it's a montage, the truth is that it's still a little scary. If the young man at some point decided to tell the story, we're sure no one would believe him. What do you think? Hope you enjoyed the video, Top Fivers. If you haven't already, check out our other channel, Americano, to enjoy even more amazing list videos. There'll be a link in the description, so check it out as well.